Welcome to a new edition of the Neon Jazz interview series with jazz drummer Herlin Riley. Right out of the music-rich New Orleans area, he's a cat with plenty of stories and reflections on a long life lived in the jazz world. He just released his 2016 CD called New Direction, and it's getting received very well by the public and on the charts. In the beginnings, he used to hear his family play music from his crib, so he's always had the music brain. In the professional world, he got a lot of experience being in Ahmad Jamal's band and Wynton Marsalis' band. He also gigged with the likes of Dr. John, Harry Connick, George Benson, and many others. He's also a teacher and loves giving students his wisdom. Herlin has a great story, so please dig this interview, my friends.
Well, thank you for calling me, and thank you for your interest in me and my little project.
Yeah, hey, thank you for taking some time out for me. I really appreciate it, man.
No problem at all.
I'm going to go ahead and dive right in here and ask. I know that you're busy. I saw it on your website, but give me, from your own perspective, a little snapshot of what's been going on lately with you.
I just finished touring with Dr. John. I was working with Ahmad Jamal for a few years until he retired. So now I'm basically focusing on my new project, trying to just get that off the ground. I'm also doing a project with two other drummers from New Orleans, Wynton Marsalis and Shannon Powell, and we have a project we call New Orleans Groove Masters, and we're going over to Switzerland to do that at the end of this month. Between my various projects with different players and different artists, I'm still just trying to keep putting one foot in front of the other one and keep eating.
In the vein of what's going on, your new 2016 album, New Direction, give me an idea of what went into this album and how you feel about it.
Well, I feel great about it. That's number one. I really feel fine, wonderful about the album and how it's being received. I'm more than elated with that. It took a while to put it all together. I actually recorded it back in 2014, at the end of 2014, and in December of 2014, and we kind of set it on the shelf for a year in the process of getting it all put together. Finally, when it came out in February, it's been well received. And most of the material that's on it is original material, stuff that I wrote over the past 2 years or so. That I kind of put those pieces of music together. And there's two tunes that's by Emmett Cohen on the record as well, and one by my mentor, Mr. Danny Barker. Overall, I had actually recorded 13 tunes for that particular CD, but it was too long, so I had to cut 3 of them out. I'm very, very happy with the effort and happy with the musicians that played on it with me, because they brought the music and brought my ideas to life.
That's perfect, man. Let me ask you this. I'm going to go back in your life here to growing up in New Orleans. Talk to me about your childhood and how you got so into music and more specifically into jazz.
I came from a New Orleans family and a New Orleans musical family, and there are a lot of New Orleans musical families here in New Orleans. And actually, my family were the Lasties. They're all the musicians of that family. They're now deceased, but they left an indelible mark on me and my life and over the years. And so when I was actually an infant, I was primarily raised in my grandmother's house, and being in my grandparents' house. My uncles, they would come to their parents' house because she had a piano and stuff. My grandmother always had a piano at the house, so they would always come to the house and rehearse. And in rehearsing, I got to hear the music firsthand as a baby. They would actually roll my crib into the room where they were rehearsing at, and that would kind of keep me quiet, it would kind of pacify me. The music was pacifying me as a child, as an infant. So I got to hear the music, and I got, very, very early on, one of the first tunes I heard was like Sister Sadie and Moaning and, Art Blakey and that kind of stuff. So I got to hear that very, very early in my life. And so I was always connected to jazz music. It was never foreign to me. The nuances or the feel of the groove of jazz was never, ever foreign to me. Also, the fact that my grandfather, his name was Frank Lassie, he was born in 1902, and he was actually one of the musicians who was with Louis Armstrong in 1913 in the Waste Home. He actually taught me how to play that early New Orleans drumming style, that kind of march kind of style of street beat, as we call it. He showed me that style very, very early on in my life. He actually taught it to me at the breakfast table, using butter knives. Beat out these rhythms for me on the table. And he would kind of challenge me to do them, and I would try to do them, and I could kind of almost play the rhythms in kind of that kind of way. But he would always laugh because I'd never really get the nuance of how and the really lilt and how he played, the attitude how he played it. He would kind of always laugh at me, show me the rhythm, and I tried, and he'd laugh. Oh, pop, that's not it. But here it is again. Try it again. That was a very, very important lesson in my life, and to learn that real early style of playing, almost like the ragtime style. I learned to do that very, very early, and it served me well because I got to go to London with a show called One More Time, which was a 1920s musical based in New Orleans, and we went to London. I stayed there 6 months doing the show, and in doing so, I got to hear and meet a lot of great musicians from New York. I hadn't gone to New York in 1981. I hadn't been there yet. So being in London, I got to go to Ronnie Scott's every night and check out these different musicians who were playing, who were coming to town either at the beginning of their tour or at the end of the tour. That was a very, very crucial time in my life as far as my development and as far as my meeting and associating with different musicians.
Why was it the drums? At the age of 3, you picked up the sticks. Why was that the first instrument?
Well, because they were available. Drums were available, and I'm a natural drummer, man. I'm very, very natural, and I didn't even use the sticks at first, man. I would have the Quaker Oats grist box. I would put them between my legs and make like bongos when I was a kid. My drums, and then I would get my grandmother's pots, and the top, the pot tops would be my cymbals, and I would get different sized pots and buckets and stuff, and make my own. I would make up instruments to play. I'd make up drums around the house. The drums chose me. I didn't really choose them. They were always there, and I could always play them. That was always a part of my life. Also during that time, when I was very, very young, when I was 12 years old, I received a trumpet from my Uncle Melvin. Melvin Lasky was my uncle, and he lived in New York. He had played with Willie Bobo. He played with Aretha Franklin. He played with King Curtis, Ornette Coleman. He was a professional musician, and he was my mentor. And I wanted to be like him. And so I begged him to send me a trumpet. So he did. When I was 12 years old, he sent me a trumpet, and I began to play the trumpet through my elementary school year, and then junior high, and then high school, and then I got a scholarship to go to college playing the trumpet. And so during my school years, although I could play the drums, that was not my main focus. My main focus was the trumpet, but I could naturally play the drums, and so when I would be in band rehearsals in high school, and we would take a break, I would go over to the drummers, and I could always play those things that the drummers couldn't do. For instance, like one of those Art Blakey press rolls, I could always do that. That was one of the things my grandfather taught me. Most drummers in high school bands, all the rolls that they played open rolls, like military open kind of rolls. And so I could do this press roll, and I would challenge the drummers to do that. None of them could do it. So as a result, they would show me different other things about the drums, like this is a flam, this is a Rattle McHugh, or this is a 5-stroke roll or 7-stroke roll or whatever. And none of those things I knew. I didn't know. I didn't have any idea about the rudiments, the rudiments of drumming. Although I could play the 26 rudiments that people who are kind of classically trained, they study. I had no connection to that stuff. So in high school, the drummers would kind of show me these things because I challenged them in another way on the drums. My main focus was the trumpet, and because of being a trumpet player, I got to understand how to understand melodies and form, and also harmony. As it turned out, being now a professional musician and professional drummer, I still have a connection with the trumpet and with the piano, where I can write and compose music.
So obviously the world stage has been your educational facility, but when you were in college, what did you learn in a formal educational environment?
Well, I didn't stay in college very, very long. I went to Mississippi Valley State, and coming from New Orleans, when I went to Mississippi, that was a very, very, very slow for me. Mississippi Valley State is in the Delta. Mississippi it's like cotton fields. It's all in cotton fields, and wide open spaces. And coming from New Orleans, New Orleans is so lively and there's so much going on. There's always a party going on. There's like second line parades going on. There's street parades. There's always these festivals and things going on. When I got to college, that environment, as a musician, it didn't suit me at all. So I only stayed a semester and I came back home to Southern University here in New Orleans. And as a result, I started playing gigs on Bourbon Street. And eventually I kind of, I dropped out of school and started working as a professional musician. That was primarily also because I was married, too. I got married very, very early in my life. I was 18 years old when I married my wife. As a result, I was able to start playing gigs and start working on Bourbon Street in New Orleans here, earning a living as a professional musician. So my college days were very, very short.
So let me ask you, from the years of 84 to 87, you just mentioned you were with Ahmad Jamal.
82 to 87, yes. I was
okay. What did you learn from your association with him? What was it that you got from playing with him on a regular basis?
Well, one thing I learned from him is how to, I watched it, and watching him, he always played with intensity. He always played with a command of his instrument. He played each and every time like it was a performance. If we were rehearsing with just ourselves in a room rehearsing, or if there was 10 people in the room or 10,000, you always play with the same intensity, the same intent, and the same commitment to playing, to executing the pieces that he wanted to do on the music. That's the primary thing I got from him, to always approach the music with a seriousness and with intensity. Even I play around a little bit, but there's a seriousness that's going on there. There's a focus that's always in place. And so I think I got that from Ahmad Jamal, because he was the first professional jazz musician that I'd worked with on that level. I worked with Al Hurt before that, and Danny Barker and around here in New Orleans, but to go on the world stage, and I began to travel with Ahmad Jamal, to be on the world stage with him. That was the thing I picked up most from him. His commitment to playing and the intensity, that level that he always played with.
And then you played with a lot of other folks like Marcus Roberts, Dr. John, Harry Connick, George Benson, the list goes on. What did you get from playing with so many people that had so many years and mileage in the jazz world?
Once I started investigating and playing with these people, they all had the same kind of commitment to excellence, for lack of a better word. They were always committed to playing, music as best they could at a high level. In order to do that, you have to practice, and you have to have a commitment to your instrument. And you have, and also, I learned from working with those guys that each and every one of them had their own voice on their instrument. And as a professional musician, that's one of the things I've tried to develop over the years. To develop my own particular voice on the drums. It's very interesting that you listen to the piano. The piano has the same 88 keys, but you can hear one bar of Monk and it's him, or you can hear Oscar Peterson or Duke Ellington or some and you can identify their sound just by their approach to the instrument. And so and the drums are pretty much I find the same kind of thing with the drums. You can hear Art Blakey, and I know him as opposed to listening to Elvin Jones or the Max Roach or Buddy Rich. Everybody has, each one of these musicians and artists have developed their own voice and their own sound on the instrument. And that's the thing that I've tried to adopt as well, to develop my own sound and my own voice. Wynton used to always say to me, man, it's always better to be a number one yourself than a number two somebody else. So that's one of the things I consciously try to develop over the years.
Being with Wynton Marsalis and his band had to be a big experience too. How did that happen?
It was several things that happened. First of all, my first encounter with Wynton was we were playing with a group with Danny Barker. Danny Barker formed a band called the Fairview Baptist Church Christian Band, and this band was made up of all with children from like 8 to 18. And Wynton came in, and we never knew each other. And none of the kids knew each other. We just started playing music together. We kind of introduced ourselves but it was mostly like the slow camp that Danny Barker, had formed with this band. And so we all started playing together. And so that was my first time. I was playing the trumpet at the time. And Wynton and I had a dispute that, talking about being in that band. He said, man, I didn't see you in the band. I was like, I didn't see you either when we were children. I didn't see you either. We both disputed, we were kind of disputed the fact whether or not we were there. And finally, someone came up with a picture that showed both of us there together. So that ended that argument. And then later on, as I said, when we were in London, I got to meet all these different artists. And one of the artists I met at Ronnie Scott's was Art Blakey. And when Art Blakey came to Ronnie Scott's, Wynton and Branford was playing with him. So during this time, I was doing this 1920s musical one more time. So Branford came to the show and heard me playing this musical, and I just went back and told Wynton, about the musical that I was playing and so forth. So I went to Ronnie Scott's that night, and I met Wynton, and this is the first time I met him as an adult. We both had a reputation. He knew who I was, and I certainly knew who he was. He was definitely making noise on the jazz scene at that time. Of course, I knew who he was because also I worked with his dad, with Wynton Marsalis, for years, and before that with other New Orleans artists. Ellis and I were sidemen or I guess associates with other New Orleans artists, like with Teddy Riley, and Ellis would always talk about his sons who were musicians, Branford and Wynton. And so finally, when I met them in London, I already knew who he was, and he knew who I was, that kind of thing. Later, after that, Wynton saw me playing with Ahmad Jamal at Fat Tuesdays. He saw me playing with Ahmad at Fat Tuesdays. He heard me playing a whole other style of music. He heard me playing that. Then later, even after that, I was doing this gig at the New Orleans Jazz and Heritage Festival with his dad, with Ellis. It was a trio. It was myself and Reginald Veal, the bassist. And Wynton came and sat in. And when he sat in, he liked the feel of the music. He really liked the feel of the music with Reginald and myself. And about a year later or so, he hired Reginald Veal in December of '87, and then in February of '88, he hired me. And so he brought both of us into the band, and I think his music changed after that, after that particular encounter. Yeah, so that's pretty much how it happened. Yeah, Jeff Tain Watts left the band in February, and he called me.
You played all over the place, Lincoln Center. You played at a lot of hallowed institutions and a lot of places all over the world. Does it ever lose its intrigue or its luster for you to play in places like that?
I am so forever grateful to live a childhood dream. I'm living a childhood dream. I've never wanted to do anything else other than play music. And I'm living the dream of playing music. So every opportunity for me to play is a privilege. I don't take anything lightly. I don't take anything for granted. It never loses its luster for me. I'm so grateful to have raised a family, playing music. I've never had another job in my life. Music has always been my source of income. And it gives me the most joy. It brings the most joy and pleasure to me, when I'm playing music. So I don't take any of this for granted at all. I am very, very grateful for the opportunity to live a life, doing something that I really, really enjoy doing, and manage to make a living at it. So I really don't take it for granted. So I play on the street sometimes when I come home to New Orleans. If there's a street band or something playing, I may just join in with the guys and just play on the street, because that's what I enjoy doing. I'll play in little dive clubs or something just to go and check out and just play with the guys because I enjoy doing that. Or I've played at the White House. I played at the Kennedy Center, at the Carnegie Hall. I played all these places, and I try to play taking that page out of Ahmad Jamal's book. I try to play each and every one of those gigs with the same intensity and same approach and same seriousness, because I'm very, it's a privilege. I'm living a privileged life to do what I enjoy doing and to make a living at it.
Beautiful. And you've had a lot of great teachers in your life, and you yourself are a teacher. Tell me what your philosophy is with your students when you teach.
When I teach, basically, I never learned the drums, as I said earlier, through academia. I didn't have a drum teacher growing up, with rudiments and all those the regimens that most drummers have in their development. My development came in the practical way. I started playing the drums in the church. My grandfather played in church, so I watched him play. And then when he got up to talk, I sit down and played the drums. At every chance I got. My teaching comes basically from a practical perspective. It's the experiences that I've had and the way that I've learned how to play and to make the music, to understand how to function inside of a particular style of music. When I've developed that understanding, and so when I teach people from that perspective. I teach from the practical perspective. I tell people about, this is the rhythm that you play for this style of music, and this is what you play for this style of music. And you have to put the emphasis on this part of the kid versus that other part, for different styles of music. So my teaching comes from a practical perspective. And basically, one of the things I tell people is that all music starts with rhythm. All the music starts with rhythm. And the rhythm that you play will define the style of the music that you're playing. When I'm teaching, I'm trying to teach from that perspective, to teach people how to play the certain rhythms that would define a particular style. Yes, and how to use, and all the things that you're doing to do that. I mean, in accomplishing that, how to play, what fills to play, how you play a fill in a particular style, when to play the fill, when to play, when to just play time, when to play, interactive, when you play interactive, with the people that you're playing with, and versus when you play, just the time, or, so my approach to teaching comes from a very practical sense.
You've played with what the world would consider jazz heroes, and you're a jazz hero yourself. But who are your jazz heroes?
Oh man, my number one jazz heroes are my uncles, man. My uncle Melvin Lasty. And see, people don't, most people would not associate that, but I mean those are the people that really touched me at a point in my life, when I in my childhood, in my youth, in my development as a baby. I mean, they touched me and they put their hands on me and they showed me, they were my examples ahead of me, because when I first met my wife, and I told her I wanted to be a musician, she's like, she couldn't understand the concept of how people become a professional musician. She didn't understand that. So I had these examples in front of me of people who played the music professionally, who actually made a living. So they were my musical heroes, basically. My uncle Melvin Lasty, David Lasty, and Walter Poppy Lasty. Most people don't know that, but they are the ones who put their hands on me, who touched me, who influenced me, the examples that I saw in front of me, and they showed me the possibilities of what could actually happen if you invest in music and invest in practicing and learning how to play. So they were the people that most influenced me. Now, as I got older, of course, I started checking out other musicians and other artists, and I started checking out other artists. And I guess one of the people that really, really touched me was Ray Charles. Everything Ray Charles and Louis Armstrong. Louis Armstrong, of course. Louis Armstrong and Ray Charles. These two people, everything they touched seemed like turned to gold with it. Whatever they did, they just had such a connection, such a spiritual connection to the music, and that always moved me. I guess those are the two people, I guess, who of people who are popular artists and popular people who are popular that everyone knows. But those two people are the two people that touch me the most.
Let me ask you this. It's a general question, but why do you love jazz?
I love music, and jazz is just a component, just one of the music that allows you the most freedom. The most, I guess that's why, because it allows the most freedom. It's freedom but within a form, within a structure. I love that freedom of and I love the conversation, the dialogue of jazz, the dialogue of playing with other musicians, and to bring the spirit of different musicians together and to be able to create music. I don't know if it's necessarily, jazz as a, I would like to say just improvisation of music. Jazz is a kind of narrow term. Jazz music encompasses so many different styles of music, and all the styles that it encompasses are improvisational styles. So you can improvise in Latin, you can improvise in playing straight ahead, you can improvise playing a funk music, you could, so I love improvisational music.
Let me ask you this: what's the nicest thing a fellow musician has ever said to you?
People have told me that they like the spirit that I play with, the joy that I bring to the music. I even feel funny even saying that because I never like to toot my own horn. But those are words that people have said to me. That's enough of that. I mean, I like they say that they like the spirit that I play with and the joy that I bring to the music, and and they say that sometimes that I uplift the bandstand, in my presence. So I don't like talking about myself like that, but those are things that people have said to me.
Let me ask you this: what's the greatest thing about waking up every day?
Oh man, that I wake up. That's the greatest thing. I wake up. You wake up. And I guess the most important thing what I've learned over the years is that if you can live your life in peace, I'm very much at peace with myself, with my situation, with my life, my wife, my family. I'm at peace with my health. I'm at peace with my relationships with my extended family members. So the fact is, that's the greatest thing I wake up with. I wake up with a sense of peace. And also not just peace, but I wake up with a sense of optimism. I'm optimistic about life. I'm optimistic about everything around me. I'm optimistic, even though sometimes we have hurdles to cross, and there are trying times. We have to face these uneasy times. But the fact is, if you wake up every day, you have a chance to do better. And the fact is, I can wake up and say, okay, yesterday was a little rough, but today is going to be better. And so I live with that kind of optimism.
You're far from being done in the world of jazz, but you've left such a huge mark up to this point. When the world leans back on the proverbial easy chair and they peel back the layers of jazz history and they come across your name, what do you want them to remember you by? Your mark and what you've left behind.
I want them to remember me by the honesty that I've always tried to play with. And I've always tried to play with, and I've always tried to give everything of myself and leave it on the bandstand. I try to approach the music each and every time, like Ahmad Jamal, like before, with the same intensity and the same kind of commitment. I want people to say, this guy, he always played with joy. I always wanted people to recognize. I want people to recognize God's grace through me, through the light that he's shining on me. That's what I like people to recognize, to remember me by.
Beautiful. Herlin, hey, thank you for opening up and giving me your story, man. I really appreciate it.
But thank you so much for calling, man. I really appreciate you too, Joe.
Thanks for listening and tuning in to yet another Neon Jazz interview, where we give you a bit of insight into the finest players in New York, Kansas City, and spots all over the world, giving fans all that jazz. And thanks to Herlin for his exceptional jazz story and his time. If you want to hear more interviews, go to Famous Interviews with Joe Domino on the iTunes Store or visit the neonjazz.blogspot.com for all things Neon Jazz. Until next time, enjoy the music, my friends.
Neon Jazz.